Today, I'm going to show you the best way to 100% complete the full journal inside of Roblox Dig. So real quick before we get into it, I basically created a little mini series on my channel on the dedicated guides for each location for the journals. However, I wanted to create one big video that goes through every single location. That way, people who are just trying to go from start to finish and have the more updated guide, I wanted to create that for you. So this is going to be basically all of those compiled together with it being optimized. So there's going to be chapters below, so you can skip to each section if you need to go to that specific location. And throughout the video, you will notice that there's going to be the loadout in the top right hand corner of the screen that is recommended. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the video. So how this is going to work is I'm going to give you a recommended loadout for each rarity. For junk rarity, you should be using the magnet shovel. For your charms, you should be using the imp horns, the ice picks, and the cauldron hat. For the common rarity, you should be using the solstice shovel with the basic magnet, and the charms are going to be the same thing. For the unusual rarity, you can use the same thing, but myself, I use the starfire shovel. You can use the green magnets, and then the same 3 charms. For the scarce rarity, you're going to use the starfire shovel, the fortuned magnet, and for the charms, you're going to use the cauldron hat, the imp horns, and the solstice bell. For legendary, the starfire shovel, the legendary magnet is recommended, and the same 3 charms is the last. For mythics, use the starfire shovel, then you can use the magic magnet, and then for charms, use the same as the last 2. For divines, it's going to be the starfire shovel mixed with the crimson steel magnet, and also the same last 3 charms. Prismatic is also going to be the starfire shovel mixed with the same 3 charms. Now that the loadouts are out of the way, we're going to be using those loadouts for each of those rarities, and now let's go ahead and get into the best locations for every single item. Starting off with the junk items, the tin can, the cinder block, the cog, and battery can all be found anywhere inside of the grass. And then on the road here that leads to Verdant, you're going to find the lost shrubs abundance there. Moving on to the common items, the old coin, the metal pipe, the wood plank, and coal can all be found also in the grass or stone. The rock chunk does have an abundance if you come beside the entrance to Cinder Cavern right here. The bread has an abundance inside of Foxtown, so you can see it here. The log also has an abundance, which is going to be next to the combat guild, just to the left of it. And the acorn also has an abundance on the hill going up towards Rooftop. You can see the abundance here. The tire and pine cone can both be found anywhere. And for the last common item, the compass can be found at an abundance just near the entrance to Verdant Vale. Moving on to the unusual items, the grabby arm, the lunchbox, the ring, couch, calcite, pyrite, envelope, hamster, limestone, and woodpecker can all be found in the dirt or stone area. The more rocky, like mineral type items of those, like the pyrite, calcite, etc., can be found more mainly on the road or rock areas. And then the rest have abundances, like the traffic cone can be found in Foxtown. For the worm, there is a bunch of abundances in this central area in between the rocks. You can see that there. The bunny has an abundance just behind Foxtown if you look at the area here. And then for the carnelian, it has an abundance on top of the lighthouse hill just around the corner. And finally, the morpho butterfly can be found in front of the combat guild entrance. Moving on to the scarce items, starting with the baseball bat and cake. Both of these items can be found anywhere in the grass. The washing machine is actually relatively hard for some reason. You can tell by the existing. So if you are struggling with this, I would recommend just digging anywhere inside of the road. And then for the frog, the flute, magnifying glass, and salamander, I would recommend just digging anywhere in the dirt. And then for these mineral type items like the pendant, sapphire, quartz, and tungsten, I would recommend just digging anywhere on the road or even on some of the rock piles. For the snake, there is an abundance just beside of the entrance to combat guild. There's actually a lot spread out. The feather is going to be next to the bunny abundance beside of Foxtown. You're going to see it just here. For the wanwood crown, at the top of the lighthouse hill, you can see the lighthouse over there in the distance. Just here is the wanwood crown abundance. And for the final scarce item here on the mountain going up or down to the lighthouse, you're going to see the tulips abundance just here. Moving on to the legendaries, the cave painting bullhorn. The best location for this is going to be on any of the like rock piles scattered around. Next up, we have the teddy bear. This can be found anywhere in the dirt. And then we have the pet rock. This is one of the most common legendaries. You can find it in the dirt or even the rock. The cave painting mighty, going to be the same recommendation as the other paintings, just on any of the rock abundances. The tiger frog, I would recommend just digging anywhere in the dirt. And the diamond ring, same thing, just anywhere in the dirt. For the sniffles egg, it's not too hard to get, just anywhere in the dirt or road, either or. The gold nugget actually has an abundance at Copper Mesa if you know where that is, but if you don't want to go over there for some reason, then you can also dig this up at Fernhill anywhere on the road. The TV, mole, and tree, all 3 can just be found anywhere inside of the dirt area. The future paths painting, I would recommend just digging inside of the road for this. The wagon can actually be a little difficult. This was one of the last legendaries I actually got for this. I personally got it from Copper Mesa, so I'd recommend digging there. However, you can also just get it anywhere inside of Fernhill Forest, more common during the snow. The kazoo can also be found anywhere inside of the dirt area. I struggled with this one for some reason, so if you're struggling with it, just pop a bunch of luck totems, to be honest. And then for the bowling trophy, this can be found at Foxtown. You can see the very tiny abundance here next to the leaderboards. Moving on to the mythical items, the OMB. So a lot of people actually struggle with this one, surprisingly. You can find it anywhere in the road or dirt. However, how I personally got it is to just drive around and wait for different like dig spots to appear. So if you didn't know, little dig spots can appear and a collar will be coming out of them. If you see it being pink, then there's a chance the OMB can be in it. However, I'd recommend just digging in the dirt or grass because that's pretty rare to find. The next one is the grandfather painting. This one a ton of people struggle with. My best recommendation is it's going to be just dig anywhere on top of the little stone piles. That's where I personally got it, and I've seen a lot of people get it that way. The banishing hammer is one of the easiest mythics in the game to get, I'd say, so I'd recommend just digging anywhere inside of the dirt or stone pathway. The gnome is also super easy to get. You can get it anywhere, however there is an abundance for it. If you go next to Verdant Vale, on top of the little mountain here, you can see the abundance. You can just hop up the tree to get up there. Moving on to the divine items, going with the pot of gold. This can be found anywhere inside of the grass area. And then we have the old car. It's a little easier to get than the pot of gold, and I'd recommend just digging anywhere in the stone. And for the prismatic for this area, which is going to be one of the easier prismatics to get, I've actually found so many of these. I've never struggled getting this. I would just dig anywhere in the grass. It's super easy to get this if you're struggling with this one, to be honest. I don't know how. And that is going to conclude and complete the journal entry for Fernhill Forest. Starting off with the common items, there's actually no junk items for this. So with the cowbell, the best location is going to be around the pig abundance area in front of the barn. And I would recommend the same exact thing for the egg, just in front of the barn area. For the apple, there is an abundance for this. To the left of the barn next to the apple trees, you will see the abundance there. The onion and millipede both can also just be found anywhere in the grass. And then the carrot has an abundance next to the entrance, just off to the left here. You can see it there. Moving on to the unusual items, the gas can, the bee's nest, the watering can. All three of these items can be found anywhere in the dirt. I recommend just digging around this area. The chicken actually has an abundance just in front of the road here. You can see it there. The 4-leaf clover and glasses, nothing special about these. I recommend just digging anywhere in the grass. The eggplant does have an abundance as well next to the carrot abundance. You can see it just here. The aquamarine can be found anywhere in the road. However, I personally would recommend getting it in Cinder Cavern if you're having trouble, because there is an abundance there, but you shouldn't be struggling with this too bad. And then the sunflower also has an abundance. All the way at the back of Verdant Vale, you can see the sunflower kind of tucked away in the corner here. Moving on to the scarce items, starting with the giant seed, there is an abundance to the right of the entrance next to these towers. Both the bee and pie items can be found anywhere in the grass. And then for the tractor steering wheel and tractor engine, both of these have abundances in front of the barn. You can see them just next to each other there. And then the final scarce item, the scarecrow, actually has 2 abundances in front of the jam shovel area. All right, moving on to the legendary items, the pig actually has an abundance in front of the barn, very close up, so you can see it there. Next up, for the cow and goat, both of these I recommend finding inside of the like taller grass here to the left of the barn entrance. The enigma painting, I would recommend just digging anywhere in the road for it, or even the rock piles. For the emerald, I would also recommend digging anywhere in the road, or once again any of the rock piles. The scythe I personally found anywhere in the grass. You might struggle with this one a little bit, but it's not too difficult. Just dig in the plain open grass. Moving on to the mythical items, the pickle is pretty easy to get. I'd recommend just digging anywhere in the tall grass area over here, or even the pig abundance. I've dug up a lot there as well. The weaponized stick, I'd also recommend digging in this tall grass area. I've dug up like a lot of these here. Moving on to the divine items, we have the turnip head. There's only one divine for this area, and it's relatively easy to get. I'd recommend digging in the tall grass area here. I've actually dug up a lot of these going for the prismatics. Moving on to the prismatics, there are 2 for this area. Newly added drowsy giant. This one is the harder prismatic to get in this area. It actually took me a little bit. I would just recommend popping meteors if you have the abilities to do so, and then just digging in this tall grass area here. And the same goes for the sunflower mascot. This is pretty common. I gotten a lot of these while going for the drowsy giant, also in the tall grass area. And then we have the final 2 items, which are going to be boss items. If you don't know how to get those, I'll quickly explain. You need to kill the fuzzball, and you have a 30% chance to get the fuzzball and a 90% chance to get the fuzz baby. If you don't know how to spawn the fuzzball in, there's going to be a flower that spawns randomly inside of Verdant Vale. It's pretty tiny, but it does emit a tiny bit of light. It can spawn literally anywhere inside of this area, and once it does, you just interact with it and the fuzzball will spawn in, and that will complete the Verdant Vale journal entry. So starting off with the junk items, we have the clump of sand. So this is obviously just going to be found anywhere in the sand. Next up, we have the sock. So I personally found this by the shoreline, so I would just dig like along this square there. And then we have seaweed. I also found this on the shoreline, so I actually went on the more darker part of sand there near the actual water. That worked for me. Next up, we have the bottle. There's actually a dedicated location for this, so if you have the metal detector, it's going to be right here. So if you're digging in this location, it's going to be best. And then we have the battery, just anywhere in the sand or rock area. Next up, we have the common items. So this is going to be the fan coral. So this is going to be found here on the shoreline as well. And then we have the tube coral as well. Same thing, same spot. For the next two commons, we actually have dedicated locations for them. So the plastic bucket can actually be found over here. There's also another location by the dock as well. And then for the coconut, it can also be found in a couple locations, but right here is where I got it. Next up, we have the sand dollar. So this is going to be found near the shoreline or even some of the rocks near the shoreline. And we have the fishing hook, which can also be found just anywhere in the sand or rock. The shark tooth, I personally found this on the rocks over here, so I'd recommend digging there. The worm is going to be just found anywhere on the sand, as well as the sandals, which is also just going to be found on the sand. The glasses I actually found next to the shoreline, so I'd recommend digging there. The umbrella, I'd recommend digging along this area here. And then the starfish is going to be found on the shoreline in the sand as well. Next up, moving on to the scarce rarity items, we have the ship helm. I personally found this on the rock area here next to the shore. So for the rubber duck scarce item, you're going to have a dedicated location for this. So if you use your metal detector, you're going to see it's by this little rock cluster here. Moving on to the fishing rod item, you can actually find this under this ridgeway here. So if you use your metal detector, you can see the abundance there as well. And then we have the marlin fish and the turtle. These are both going to be found on the shoreline, the darker area there where I mentioned earlier. And then the nautilus fossil can be found on the rocky areas. Moving on to the legendaries, starting off with the palm tree. This can be found anywhere in the sand area. And then we have the diamond ring. I personally found it in the sand area as well, but you can also find it on the rocks. Then we have the shark skull. So the best place for this is going to be on the rocks anywhere here. And then we have the bongos, which can also just be found anywhere in the sand. Moving on to the mythicals. Some of these can be pretty tricky. The duck floaty is one of the easier ones. You can find it basically anywhere in the sand area. The shark plushie you can actually find on the rocks next to the water. I've found quite a bit of them actually there. By far the hardest one to get, you can just tell by the existing compared to the other, is the fish. This took me so long to get, but you find it on this darker patch area here. It's going to be the best spot. Do not get disencouraged. It will take you a while if you're unlucky. Moving on to the divine items. This is going to be the bold and bash painting. You can find it on the wet area here. The giant fish cracker can also be found anywhere in the sand. I personally found it like up here, but you can also get it here. Moving on to the prismatic. This is going to be the pirate ship. It's actually relatively easy to find. I've actually dug a couple of these while I was here. I've dug a couple on this wet patch, and then I've also dug a couple up here around the tree area. And finishing it off, we have the two boss items. To get, all you have to do is take out the king crab, and you can see it is a 100% chance to get the claw and a 20% chance to get the king crab. So you can spawn that in with the horn or wait for it to naturally spawn. And that is going to complete the Cinder Shores journal. All right, so starting off with the wilted flower, you can find this anywhere in the grass area. The wild berries can also be found anywhere in the grass area, as well as the snail. So just dig around the area here. Moving on to the unusuals, the ring can be found on the pathway here. Alternatively, the pathway in Fernhill Forest. The mouse can be found anywhere in the grass area or even by the graveyard. The red cap mushroom can be found anywhere in the grass area as well. The woodpecker can be found in the grass area as well. It can also be found inside of Fernhill Forest in the grass area. The brown cap mushroom is also going to be in the grass. And the gravestone, your best chance of finding is going to be inside of the gravesite here. Moving on to the scarce rarity items. The first one being the coffin. You can find this also inside the grass area, but I have had more luck inside of the gravestone area as well. Next up, we have roses. This is going to be most commonly found in the grass area. Moving on to the legendaries, we have the dark oak tree, which is just going to be found in the grass. Next, we have the skeleton hand. So this one's going to be found in the gravesite. Then the raccoon, which is also going to be found in the gravesite, and the ghost as well, also found in the gravesite here. Moving on to mythicals, there's two for this place. So the brown bear, the best location, is going to be in this area. I actually dig a lot here for some reason. Then we have the woodland staff. I found this over towards the road, so you can find that over there. Moving on to the divines, we have pot of gold. I've actually found multiple of these in Fernhill Forest rather than Rooftop Woodlands, so I'd recommend just digging in the grass area over there. Then we have Finn sword. This can technically be found anywhere in Rooftop Woodlands. However, I have found a couple of them inside the gravesite. Next, we have the haunted tree, which can also technically be found anywhere, but I personally dug it up right here in the grave area. And then we have the two boss items, which is just going to be the candlelight lantern and the candlelight phantom, which if you didn't know, you just get them from killing the candlelight phantom boss. It's going to be a 100% chance for the lanterns and then a 20% chance for the phantoms. And that's going to complete the Rooftop Woodlands journal entry for you. Starting off with the first two junk items, the chalk here actually has an abundance. If you go down the elevator, you can actually see the abundance just here at the start. And then the gravel, I would recommend just digging on top of actual like rocks inside of the cavern. Moving on to the common items, the metal pipe, there's going to be an abundance for this. So if you are following the blue mushrooms, you will just run into the metal pipe abundance. Then we have raw copper. It can also be found anywhere on the stone. However, it's actually way more common inside of the copper mesa if you want to dig there for it. For coal, there is an abundance as well. If you're following these blue mushrooms towards the enchanting area, you will see an abundance here. And then for the pickaxe, there's actually a couple of abundances here, a little bit forward from the entrance, you can see. And then the glow stick can just be found anywhere on the stone. Moving on to the unusual items, starting with the gas can here. It can also just be found anywhere near the start or basically anywhere in the cave. For the raw item, there is also a ton of abundances for this inside of the cave, so kind of just drive around. It's a little confusing to explain how to get here, but you will see a bunch. Moving on to the spider eye and spider, both of these items are going to be most commonly found inside of the spider boss room. For the spider in specific, you can see there is a ton of abundances around the area. For the peridot item, this can be found at an abundance kind of near the spider cave on the way to the Jinn statue here. For sulfur, there is also a abundance for this, so it's actually just going to be on the way to the spider cave. And then the aquamarine also has an abundance. Just following the blue mushrooms, you will run right into it. Moving on to the scarce items, we have the cave bat, the ruby, the amethyst, and the sapphire. All four of these items are going to be most commonly found in the bottom area where the enchanting area is. There is actually an abundance for the sapphire as well if you need to use that. The jackhammer can also be found down here as well anywhere, but I would recommend just digging on top above the elevator. That's where I personally got this. For the tungsten, there is an abundance for this. It's going to be on the way towards the spider. For topaz, there is also an abundance. While you're following the blue mushrooms next to this little NPC here, you can actually see the abundance right here on the ground. Moving on to the legendary items, we have the gold cart and the diglet. Both of these items are going to be most commonly found down here around the same area. And another item you're probably going to be struggling with a little bit is this tanzanite, so I would recommend just digging right here. This is where I personally got it, the area in front of the enchant. Just make sure you're digging on the stone and not the grass. Moving on to the mythical items, starting off with the rock statue. So you're most commonly going to find this down here. At least I've found a lot down here. And the diamond as well. You shouldn't struggle too hard with this, but it is a little bit harder than the rock statue, so this area is going to be the best spot for it again. For the celestial crystal, this is going to be one of the hardest mythics to actually obtain. You can technically get it anywhere, however I personally got it right here, so you can see if you're following the blue mushrooms, two archways meet. Just digging in this open space here, that is where I personally got it. Moving on to the divine items, the Jinn god of gold statue, I would recommend digging up in front of the Jinn god of gold statue. I mean, it only makes sense for this to have the highest luck for it, which if you don't know, if you give him a golden mutation item, you actually get an hour of an additional luck boost. So while you're here, you might as well give him one, so that way you're able to get higher luck. Next up, we have the golem statue. This can be found literally anywhere in the rocks. However, I personally found it above the elevator. So the hypno blue shroom, I personally dug it up right here, kind of around these other blue mushrooms. So just make sure you are digging around the area down here and not up at top. Moving on to the prismatic item, this is going to be the mole king. This is a little bit hard to get, but not too hard. It can literally be found anywhere, but once again, I actually dug this up at the same exact spot as I did the golem, just above the elevator area. And then we have the spider egg and giant spider, which is pretty obvious. If you don't know, you just have to kill the spider boss, which can either spawn naturally or you can have somebody spawn it in with a totem, and then you have a 100% chance to get the spider egg and then a 15% chance to get the giant spider. And that is how you complete the Cinder Cavern journal entry. So starting off with the clump of snow, there is a specific location for that. If you use the metal detector along this giant area here, you're able to find clump of snow. And then for the other two junk items, the icicle and the toothpaste, these are both just going to be found inside of the snow anywhere. Moving on to the common items, there's 5 for this area. So we have the block of ice starting off. This can just be found along any of the snow. And then for the beanie and snowberry, these are actually different because there are abundances. So if you come over to the spawn area where the merchant is, you can actually see the beanie abundance here just beside of the merchant campfire. And then a couple of locations for the snowberries. So one here and then also one in this back corner beside of this lodge. And then for the popsicle and yogurt, these two items can just be found anywhere in the snow. Moving on to the unusual items, there's actually quite a bit for this area. So in terms of the ice pick, ice cream, old harp, and sled, there's nothing special to them. They can all be found anywhere inside of the snow or even on the rock over here. However, for the snowball unusual, this item can be found around this area. You use the metal detector. There is a green snowball abundance here. The snow cone can also be found anywhere in the snow. The thermometer is actually a little bit different. You find it inside of Glacier Hollow. Basically anywhere inside of this cave, you can just dig in the snow or even the rock and you can find this item. Moving on to the scarce items, the giant bell can be found anywhere inside of the snow. The frost lily actually has a dedicated location. If you come next to the polar bear abundance, you can see it here. The fridge is actually really common. You get a lot of these, especially when digging in the polar bear abundance, so I'd recommend just digging here. Same thing with the penguin, snowman, and snowboard, found anywhere in the snow. I personally found a lot while digging in the polar bear abundance, so I'd also recommend digging there. Moving on to the legendaries, the cave painting. This is one a good amount of people struggle with. So you get it from inside of Glacier Hollow. It's just going to be anywhere on the rock area I'd recommend digging, whether that be the rock on the entrance or the rock inside, just dig there. In terms of the polar bear and the pine tree, both of these items can be found inside the polar bear abundance here. And then the emerald, you're going to have the highest chance of getting this on the rocky areas, whether that be on the stone over here climbing up the mountain or the stone once again inside of the hollow, just digging on this rock here. Next up, we have the frozen person and the jukebox. So both of these can also be found inside of the polar bear abundance here. I personally dug up the frozen person right here next to the merchant by the campfire at the start though. Moving on to the mythical items, the frost bug. You can find this anywhere in the snow area, so nothing special about it. And then we have the ice sculpture and the woolly mammoth. Both of these can be found inside of the polar bear abundance. That's where I personally got both of them. And then we have the snowflake. This is arguably one of the hardest mythicals to get. A lot of people are always questioning how to get this item. However, there honestly isn't really anything special to it. I personally got it out of the polar bear abundance, but you can get it anywhere. You can get it right here, over there, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure you're using the highest luck and everything you can to increase your chances. And it also prefers rainy weather as well, so make sure you're using totems for that if you want to increase your luck even more. Moving on to the divine items, we have the icy tree. This can just be found anywhere in the area here. I would recommend digging over here in the deeper snow. And then we have the ice staff and the light plains. This ice staff can kind of be anywhere. I personally dug it up inside of the glacier hollow. And in terms of the light plane, some people are going to be struggling with this one. This one's going to be the hardest divine to get, and I recommend getting it in the polar bear abundance. That's where I personally got it, so just make sure you're using all of your equipment for it. Moving on to the prismatics, they added a saber-toothed tiger with the latest update. I personally found this inside of the polar bear abundance, so I'd recommend digging here. And that will fully complete your Mount Cinder journal. You will get the legendary ice picks from it, which is super good for strength. Starting off with the junk items, the clay shard has an abundance just at the start of Copper Mesa. The water bottle and potato both have abundances in front of the salon, so you can see the water bottle and potato there. Sandstone has an abundance inside of the ravine on the way towards the glinted shovel. Moving on to the common items, the gold pan has an abundance on the hill going up towards the dinosaur. The sheriff's badge and goblet can be found anywhere in the sand area. The copper coin, raw copper, cactus chunk, all can be found with abundances in the first open area once you come up the starting ramp in Copper Mesa. Granite and millipede can both be found at the starting ramp once you first get off the ferry. You can see both of the abundances right next to each other here. Moving on to the uncommon items, the cactus can also be found inside of the first open area when you get off the ferry, so you can see it just off to the left here. The smooth vase also has an abundance beside of the combat guild inside Copper Mesa. The lavender flowers can be found with 3 abundances near the ramp that takes you to Aloha Jungle. The washboard can be found anywhere in the sand, and the tumbleweed item has a ton of abundances scattered throughout the whole area. You can see a couple here inside of the canyon. Moving on to the scarce rarity items, the dead tree and dung beetle can both be found next to each other with abundances on the ramp in front of the salon. The camel and spear can be found anywhere inside of the sand. The lasso actually has an abundance in front of the salon right here. The citrine and megaphone can be found anywhere. I'd recommend digging on the rock for the citrine though. And the scorpion has a abundance next to the dino spine area on the ramp. You can see 2 abundances here. All right, moving on to the legendary items. The gold nugget, one of the easiest legendaries to get. It has an abundance inside of the canyon if you didn't know, so on the way towards the glinted shovel. The desert ferret and wagon can both be found anywhere inside of the sand. And for the pinata dinosaur spine jukebox, all 3 of these items are very commonly found inside of the dinosaur spine. This is a very popular spot to dig, so you should know where this is. For the vulture and velociraptor skull, these can be found anywhere inside of the sand. Moving on to the mythical items, the talking bass is a little bit tricky to get. However, it's going to be most commonly found in front of the salon. The bison and horse are relatively easy to get. You can just get them anywhere in the sand or rock areas. I'd recommend digging in the dinosaur abundance if you're struggling. The revolver can be found anywhere in the sand. However, I've had the most luck finding it in the dinosaur spine abundance as well. Moving on to the divine items, the laser saber. A good amount of people struggle with this one. They did recently buff it with the trading update. I personally have dug one up in front of the salon and also in the dino spine abundance, so pick one of those spots and dig there. The ocarina I found most commonly in front of the salon, so I would just recommend digging around this area. The burger statue's the easiest divine to get. It's very common inside of the dinosaur spine abundance. For the meteor item, I'd recommend digging anywhere inside of the canyon because it's going to be most common here, I've noticed. And also make sure it is a meteor shower because that's going to increase your luck significantly to get this specific item. Moving on to the prismatic items, there's one for this area called the griffin. They recently added this with the trading update, and you can find it in the dinosaur abundance area. This is where I personally got mine from. It was a little tricky for me to get, but I ended up getting it. It's not too hard, I've noticed. And then you need the basilisk fang and the basilisk, which if you don't know, I'll quickly go over. To get these items, you have to kill the basilisk boss. You can see here you have a 100% chance to get the basilisk fang and a 30% chance to get the basilisk. So after you get all those, that will complete your journal entry for the Copper Mesa area. Starting off with the common items, because there are no junk items here. The dragon fruit has an abundance next to the village area. You can see it here. The papaya also has an abundance just next to the ramp you come up into the jungle from right here. The jungle blowpipe also has an abundance just next to the village. You can see it off to the side. Moving on to the unusual items, starting with the bamboo, it has an abundance beside the volcano entrance just to the left of it. The machete and the ceremonial drum both can be found anywhere inside of the grass area, so I'd recommend just digging here. The kunai and Venus flytrap both have abundances. Next to the headband here, you can see the kunai, and just a little to the left, you can see the flytrap. Moving on to the scarce rarity items, the ritual mask, just next to the village, you can see an abundance next to the giant tower here. The blade shuriken and the Macau can both be found anywhere inside of the grass area. The ruby can be found anywhere, but I would recommend digging on the rocks because it is a mineral item. And then the monkey and telescope can both be found anywhere in the grass or sand areas. Moving on to the legendary items, the golden idol and life fruit are most commonly found, I've noticed, inside of the tribe area. And then the capybara and toucan are pretty common legendary items. You can find them anywhere inside of the grass or sand. Moving on to the mythical items, starting with the panda here. It can be most commonly found inside of the open grass areas. And then the giraffe is going to be a little harder to get. I would personally recommend just digging inside of the sand. That's where I personally got it. And then the final mythic triceratops skull can most commonly be found inside of the sand as well. Moving on to the divine items, the garden gnome, which is the more common divine item to get. It can be found anywhere, but I would recommend just digging anywhere in the sand. That's where I've pulled a lot of them if you're having trouble. The goblin is a bit trickier to get. You can tell by the existing here. So I personally found mine in the sand as well. However, it can be literally found anywhere. It's just going to take a little bit to get because it is the harder divine to get. Moving on to the prismatic items, starting with the Maui here. This one is very hard to get personally. It took me forever to get this. Where I personally got it was beside the other Maui heads just chilling here. You don't need to be beside these, and it definitely doesn't increase your luck, but it feels like it does, so might as well use it. And then finally, we have the mutant plant prismatic. So this one is pretty easy to get. You can get it literally anywhere, but I personally got a lot of them in the sand. I dug probably like 15 to 20 of these up before I actually got the Maui, so hopefully you have better luck than me. And after you get that, that's going to complete the journal entry for Aloha Jungle. This is going to be one of the easier journal entries to complete because of the fact that there's no abundances for it, so everything can just be dug up mainly from one spot. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Starting off with the common items because there is no junk items for this area. We have the chili pepper, molten rock, chain, volcano spike, and the obsidian. All of these items can be found literally anywhere, so I would just recommend digging at the top next to the molten boss and just dig in this open space here. Moving on to the unusual items, the hot sauce, lava bucket, fire flower, anvil. All of these I'd recommend also digging in the open area. And then the sulfur, since it is technically a mineral, I would just recommend digging on one of the little mountains or rocks here. Moving on to the scarce items, the lava worm and magma crystal. Both of these items super easy to get. I'd recommend digging for the lava worm at the open area and the magma crystal also the open area or even on one of the rocky areas. Moving on to the legendary items, this is going to be the hardest item to get out of this area, the cave painting uproar. At least this one took me the longest personally. I got everything before this. So where I personally got this was off the edge here. It recommends you to basically be digging on like rocks and things. However, I could not pull it up here, so I just jumped down here and I actually pulled it like literally right here. Next we have the phoenix feather. This is going to be the easier legendary. You can get it literally anywhere in the open area. Moving on to the divine items, only one for this area. It's also going to be pretty hard. It's a 55k. However, I got this really quickly, so obviously it is luck based, but I got this before any of the legendaries. I personally got it on top of this rock here. However, you can also get it on the open flat area. And finally, we have the two boss items. These are, if you don't know how to get them, go to the bosses tab. You have to kill the molten monstrosity. This boss does not spawn in naturally. You do have to use a blue moon totem to spawn it in. So you can see here it is a 100% chance to get the molten allies and then a 20% chance to get the molten monstrosity boss itself, which is a little bit more difficult. You're going to have to spend quite a bit of money to farm these. However, if you are struggling and just don't have enough money or a group of people to farm these with, I will be hosting some of these on my YouTube channel during live streams where we're going to be all farming this boss together. So I'd recommend subscribing with notifications on so you don't miss those. Or alternatively, you could join the Discord. It's linked in the description down below and you can group up with some people there that are farming the same thing. And that will complete the Mount Charcoal journal entry for you, which if you followed all these guides in order is going to complete your full journal. So congratulations. You now have the domino crown. This is the current build I use for the domino crown. You can switch it up if you would like. Yeah, it's a very good item for this game and you are now successfully in the end game. Obviously, there's going to be new locations as this video ages. So I'm going to continue to update the playlist, which is linked in the top right here or in the description down below. That way we can continue on to this whenever new items come out. Anyways, if you are new around here, please make sure to drop a sub to the channel with notifications on. Drop a like on the video if I helped you out. This video took me a long time to edit, so I would appreciate it a lot. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one.